podcast is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Out of the Ashes presents Missing Dad.
I might have ended up on the wrong side of the tracks if Pops wouldn't have pulled me back and said, yo.
Each episode is a thought-provoking interview with people across all walks of life to see how they were affected by missing key pieces in their relationship with their
I told
dad.
him as a youngster, he'll be the greatest man alive.
And now your hosts, Coley Harris and Amar Mountain.
Welcome to another episode of Missing Dad. I'll be your co-host, Coley Harris.
And I'm the other co-host, Amar Melton.
And we are fortunate, blessed, and honored to have with us Mr. Ernest Trippi Congo. What's so funny, bro?
Oh man, I mean, I guess you were you didn't know if it was gonna be Ernest or Trippi.
No, I'm giving the whole thing. Yes,
That's
sir.
cool.
So we're fortunate to have you here.
Man, I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming out. It really is an honor, man. Because a lot of people in the city, myself included, have a lot of respect for you. What you do in the community, and I consider you to be a genuine person. You know what I mean? You are how you present yourself. So we appreciate that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it goes both ways, honestly, because I mean, I know what you've been doing for the community. You know, especially with your, we all have struggles in the past, but the way you just came through your struggles, and there for your son and there for the community. I mean, the community loves you too. So
thank you, bro.
That's why, man, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah.
So Trippi, man, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised here in Wilmington. Family business here. Family's here. I love the city, and it was like when Coley hit me up about the podcast and the discussion. I was like, absolutely, because it's one of my passions. It's something that we really have to start to. I mean, we've been addressing it, but we really just have to address it a little further and a little bit more aggressively.
Right.
Because fatherhood is so important. I'm blessed to have my father in my life. And I'm almost 50, and I still lean on my dad daily.
Yeah.
Several times a day, just for guidance.
Yeah.
So, and I know you and your son's relationship and you and your dad's relationship is strong, and we have to continue just to let our brothers and our sisters know how important it is to, for fathers to be in their children's lives. So,
Absolutely.
I applaud what you guys are doing here.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank
bro.
you.
Yeah.
So tell us tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
I was born and raised here. Raised up in the family business. Always had, my dad is old school, so people see us and they think that we have more than the average family, the average person, but they don't realize, unless they're part of our circle, how hard we had to work and how hard I had to work at coming up.
Right.
Like I had friends on the west side of Wilmington by the office, where my parents had a pool, but if my friends wanted to go swimming in that pool, they had to work first.
Right.
So it was always work first, play later. So I grew up working a lot. I grew up working hard. So it's not really like people ask me how do you just work all the time and rarely take vacations and working 7 days a week. It's just part of how I was brought up.
Right.
And I thank my parents and especially my dad for just instilling that kind of work ethic in me as a child, and my friends.
Yeah.
And it was. If you wanted to go over to Trippi's house to go swimming, you had to clean the pool, you had to cut the grass, you had to clean up, you had to wash clothes, you had to do something before you jumped in that pool. And all my friends now were all older, in our 40s and 50s, and they all appreciate it.
Yeah.
They look back and say, man, thank you for your dad. And those who didn't want to work, they went to the left.
Yeah.
And because they weren't willing to make that sacrifice that we all made. And now we all appreciate it.
Yeah. Where do you think your father got that work ethic from?
From his grandmother. His grandmother raised him, and she was just extremely hard worker. And growing up, my dad had several jobs. He was younger when he was in college. He was in college. We always tease each other because I was in college for 9 years, but he was in college for 10 years. And so we always go back and forth about who took the longest to graduate from Dell State. Both of us are proud Dell State alumni, but it took him so long because he was working 3 and 4 jobs, and he was paying for his siblings to go to school too.
Wow.
Me, I was just down there goofing off and partying. So I don't really have I don't have the excuse like he did, but he was raised the same way he raised me. He was raised, so it was always work first. And my dad is 82.
Wow.
But he still comes to work every day. He prides himself on beating everybody to work, getting there first and leaving last. So he's not as hands-on as he always has been, but he's still there physically every day.
Wow, that's great.
Is he the one who started the business?
Yes, he was born. He was born in a funeral home, but it was his grandfather's funeral home. It was Bell Funeral Home.
Okay.
But they used to have a location in Newark. So he was raised in it. Always was around the funeral home, and eventually he just branched off and started his own business. But he was raised in it, and and the story goes from there.
Nice.
Yeah, I think you when you talk about your father, it kind of epitomizes what kind of like our guiding question for missing dad, and that is like the impact, like kind of the secret sauce of fatherhood. You know what I mean? We value mothers and all family members, but we're looking at fatherhood in particular,
Right.
and we think that kind, you know what I mean, your story kind of epitomizes that. And I guess my question would be, so like with some of your friends who didn't have that, you know what I mean, that role model in their life, like you had with your father, like what do you see like some of the major differences in, you know what I mean, some of the decisions they might have made and some of the outcomes and things of that nature?
Yeah, definitely the decisions that they made. I had a really close group of friends when we were growing up. We called ourselves the Four Horsemen because we used to always watch wrestling back in the day. So we called ourselves the Four Horsemen, and we were just always together. But eventually, as we got a little older, they started making the wrong decisions. Like my dad was always there for him to guide him,
Right.
but again, they weren't in his household.
Right.
We spent a lot of time in mine, but they also went home to a household where their fathers weren't present.
Right.
So, eventually, they started making different and wrong decisions, and they ended up incarcerated.
Right.
They ended up in the drug game. But as they matured. And as they were able to, see their mistakes and realize that that's not where they wanted to be, they would come back to my dad. They always come back to my dad and say, Mr. C, thank you so much just for being there when you were, because if they know that if he weren't there, things might have gone even worse.
Right.
But they always kind of kept his principles in them, even when they were incarcerated,
Right.
even when they were in the street game. They always kind of knew better.
You got mosquito on you.
Sure. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank
He's
you.
about to tear you up.
So they always knew better. So they always had that foundation of where they could always go back to once they got their mind right.
Right.
So they thank him daily. Like we're all still friends, and they still come and visit, and they just realize how important he was in their lives, and it's crazy because like I'm his only son, but there are so many people in this community who stop me weekly, just like, man, your dad taught me so much.
Right.
Like your dad was always there for me. Your dad helped me, and it kind of instilled in me that I have to be that same person. Like I want to be him, and I want my sons to look at me the way I look at him.
Right.
And all my children, but especially my boys. I want them to have that same. Like I have to have that same kind of relationship and that same kind of effect on my children, especially my sons, though.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask you, you kind of answered my question. I was going to say, do you think your father's influence is the reason that you grew up to be the man that you are today?
Oh, my goodness, yes, absolutely. Even if I didn't work in the funeral home, if I didn't carry carry on the family business, and they never pressured me. He was never like, you got to do this.
Right.
But I always had to work. So
Right.
even when I wasn't working funerals, I was cutting the grass in front of the funeral home. I was picking the weeds. I was cutting the bushes. I was washing the cars. But naturally, I just grew into it. But he never put pressure on me to take on the business, but it was always around work.
Yeah.
Work and school. Like you got to do good in school and you got to work hard.
Yeah, I know. Like if we look in Wilmington, like I grew up in Wilmington, and I can remember growing up. I believe I was the only one of my friends who had a father in the household, right? And I made some bad decisions, some dumb decisions, and some of my friends who didn't have fathers made better decisions than I did. But it was definitely, you definitely can feel the presence of having a father in your house. I remember myself and another friend of mine. One of my close friends. He told me, and this was recently. We in our late 40s now, and he said, "Man, I come to your house." And one of my other friends, Buffy, he said, "Well, I used to come to both of y'all's houses, and we'd hang out." He said, "Because I like the fact that y'all had dads around." And I was like, that blew me away to hear him say that. Yeah. And so I look at the city of Wilmington now, and what's going on. A lot of people I don't hear especially from officials talking about a lot of the issues that are going on, particularly with the gun violence. There's a lot of young. We were just looking at the data the other day, my son and I, and it's a lot of a lot of shootings and a lot of young people getting hurt in this city. And so my question to you would be, for a young person who doesn't have, particularly a young man who doesn't have a father in their life, like what do you think that we need to do as a community to support them?
There was a man who said something to me one time, and he said, a child doesn't necessarily need like their parents or their father in their lives. That's the best case scenario, of course, but they do need somebody in their lives. They need a mentor. They need somebody who they can lean on, who can guide them through today's through what happens daily.
Right.
So I think the key is really mentorship.
Yeah.
So we got to get back in our neighborhoods and in our children's lives who don't necessarily have a father figure, or who may have a father figure, but he needs some guidance too. So I think fathers who may need some help have to be humble enough to accept help. But I think those of us who know what our role needs to be, like we have to make sure that we are helping our children make better decisions. So like mentorship is key. Like a lot of times we lean on the police, we lean on elected officials, we lean on everybody else, but like who can talk to a young man or a young lady better than you and your wife?
Right.
Like a police officer can't do that. A police officer can't relate most of the time, and they just don't have that sincere love that you and your wife would bring.
Right.
So we really have. I think the key is really just mentorship and supporting organizations that already do mentor, but just creating more organizations that support and promote mentorship. It means a lot. I've been a mentor at several schools in the 2nd District, where I was council person, and it just makes a tremendous difference.
Right.
And I was only doing it like once a week.
Right.
But the children, the teachers would be like, "Oh my goodness, Trippi, thank you so much," because he's totally different.
Wow.
He's totally different when he knows you're coming, and he's totally different when you leave, because he appreciates just that relationship and that friendship and that guidance. So mentorship is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
that's deep.
I was just going to ask you. So you mentioned your children's. How many children do you have? Your mom asking.
No, I have 5. I have 5 children. I'm glad you brought it up too, because I am so blessed and so fortunate that I have a blended family. But it was really important to me when I had my children, and it's common knowledge, but I never really talked about it publicly. But everybody knows I have 5 children, and I have 3 mothers of my children, and I was just so blessed that they all knew how much I love my children and how much it was important that they know each other, and that I was a part of their lives.
Right.
So there was never any tension, never any friction, never any disconnect, and that just made it easier for the children. They know at the end of the day it's about the children. It's not about our relationship. I respect them, and I love them for that. And that's key, that our mothers know how important it is, and our fathers know that when we do have blended families, that our children have to know each other.
Right.
And we have to begin to let our brothers know that if they have children by more than one woman, that how important it is to take care of those children, and that those children they connect and they love each other and they spend time with each other. It makes me so happy that my children talk constantly to each other.
Wow.
They're in 3 different households, but they always talk. They're always texting, FaceTiming. My oldest is in college. He's always checking up on them.
Yeah.
So I make sure that he knows, since he's the oldest, that how important it is that he keeps in touch with his younger siblings. And again, I just can't thank the mothers of my children enough for the role that they played, and just making sure that we were just one big family. Because at the end of the day, it was all about the children.
Absolutely.
Nice. With your children, are you grooming them to jump into the family business?
I'm not grooming them. I expose them to it because, my parents didn't force me in it.
Yeah.
So my oldest son, he said he wants to take on the family business, and if he does, that's great. But if he doesn't, as long as he's happy, I'm happy.
Right.
So they've all worked funerals before, because they got to work. Kind of the same thing, like the same way I was. Yeah, they got to do something. And if they don't like it, if they don't grow into it, that's fine. We're still gonna love each other. We're still gonna be a family, but they have to do something. They gotta be productive. They just can't. So I think people see me and they think that, I'm gonna spoil my children. Of course, I'm gonna spoil them, but I'm not gonna make them rotten. I believe you're supposed to spoil your children,
Right.
but you're not supposed to make them rotten. There's a difference, because I was spoiled.
Right.
There's no way I could have ever earned the things that my parents provided for me when I was young. But I was always the hardest worker. at the funeral home. I was always the hardest worker out of my group of friends because I appreciated it, and my parents knew that the importance of me being a hard worker. So I'm exposing them to it, and if they want to do it, I'm even more happier. But if they don't, as long as they're happy, as long as they're productive, I'm fine.
Nice.
Because I don't think that we should force anything on our children, because if I force it on them and they're not happy, like the business fails, and then like what why live life if you're not happy?
Right.
So,
So I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. So I know you well known in the city. You're involved in the funeral business. I believe y'all have a few different businesses and endeavors amongst your family. But you chose to be a city council person.
mm-hmm.
So why? What made you want to even get involved in politics?
Like my family has always been extremely blessed and extremely supported by the community. So we were always giving back. Like we were always doing things for the community, like doing community days, taking the kids to Great Adventure, doing stuff for the seniors. We have an annual seniors cookout where we bring 300 seniors every Labor Day, and we just dance and party and eat together. So it was like I was always helping and giving back. So that's the kind of I just grew up around my parents, and that's what they were doing. And I realized that through being on city council, I could even help more.
Right.
So it was really just continuing to serve, but just on a different level, on a different aspect. Just just doing what my parents have brought me up to do outside of the family business in the role of government. So that's all I've tried to do since I've been on council, was just try to help.
Right.
As my father mentioned, we've been looking at the shooting data.
Father? You call me father.
My father. Are you gonna call him
That's
daddy? As this gentleman sitting across from me had mentioned earlier, we were looking at the shooting data the other day, and unfortunately, a lot of the victims are under the age of 20.
Yeah, we just had an 11-year-old shot.
Yeah, a girl.
Yeah.
It's crazy. How has the city, so thinking back when you were 15, right, growing up in the city, how do you think the city is different for a 15-year-old African-American male today, like compared to when you were 15?
Back in the 60s.
It's a lot different. I think that we had more venues. We had more access to the boys and girls clubs. I was always at the Jackson Street Boys Club when I was growing up. I think social media has a huge impact on it. We didn't have, I had friends, like guns were prevalent, but not as easily as accessible as they are now. And I think that social media plays a huge role in it. And I think that honestly, like this whole conversation that we're having right now, like the broken family has a huge role in it. And it's not drug related.
Right.
Like when we were growing up, if somebody got shot, it was 99% of the time it was around drugs. It was drug related. But now it's just a mentality of that's how you solve your differences. So I think that's a huge difference. I just think that social media aspect is huge, because it just provides it just allows for them to interact in a way where where people get upset and people are tough behind the keyboard, and then like things are misconstrued and miscommunicated. So and then when they see each other face to face, that's how they settle it.
Yeah.
I think access to to different organizations and groups is totally different. The state and the city haven't found it a priority to keep our those institutions open. I think that's a crime, but I don't think that would solve anything. But I think that it would go a long way. And I just think that there's disconnect between neighbors, and there's disconnect between our community. Like everybody in Wilmington knows each other, and if you don't know a particular person, somebody knows that person.
For sure.
So we're all connected. So we should be able to solve our differences just by having conversations. And honestly, I think that the older generation has failed our youth,
Right.
because we're too hands off. Like we blame the children for everything, and we don't look at ourselves and say, what could we have done? What could we be doing to make a difference in these children's lives? We can't, we just can't take it. We can't take the hands off approach and say that's the family's fault, or that's the family's purpose is to fix the child. to correct our child. We can't do that because this is the result. And those families have to be open to us helping.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of it's just like we've lost that connection. And I always hear my parents talk about how, when they were younger, they were, all over the city of Wilmington, the east side, the west side, South Bridge, north side, and even when we were growing up, it wasn't like these rivalries. There were rivalries, but not like east side and west side, and not like it is now. It's definitely not as deep as it is now. And the bad part is, and the sad part is that we all, those children are hurting, like their parents or their cousins, friends' children.
Yeah.
So like when we have funerals for a child, I see the same group of children like coming to these funerals, and I can't imagine growing up. Like when I grew up, there was a few children who died, who got caught up in gun violence, but not like it is now.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being that age and having to go to funeral after funeral after funeral, and it just kind of desensitizes death and violence.
And it's if I can add on to that, the trauma behind it, what you're speaking of is trauma, and these kids having all these multiple layers upon layers upon layers of traumatic experiences, from what's going on in the streets to having to bury a friend or a relative and things of that nature, and it's just not normal.
No, not at all.
And I think about what you said, talking about the community centers and just having family support and having positive mentors and all these different things are what they call assets, communal assets. And it helps build resiliency in children, because the reality is a lot of these different factors in the community can't be readily turned off. You can't just turn off gun violence. You can't just turn off a alcoholic father or absent father or an abusive parent and things of that nature. You can't turn it off. But what you do is you put things in place to help them to become stronger, more resilient, if you will, people. That's where the community centers come into play. That's where mentors come into play. That's where having a relationship with a positive adult. That's where having extracurricular activities at school and so on and so forth. That's where all this stuff comes into play to help us build stronger, more resilient children. I was going to say robust, but I want to say more resilient children to help them to get past this trauma. And you reminded me, Trip, because my life was a little bit different than yours. Decisions that I made and things I got involved in, and I can remember going through a lot of things and experiencing a lot of things that still live with me today. But I also know that if I go out in certain places, I go to the softball game or here and there, whatever, I see people who were my enemies at one point. And we've lived long enough and grown long enough to where we gotten past that, that division there to become at least cordial, and in some cases even friends. And that's the sad thing about what's going on with our young brothers and sisters today.
Yeah, and it's up to you. I know you're doing it, but it's up to people like you who can directly relate to those children and what they're going through. It's easy for me to say it because I haven't lived like that. I haven't had those experiences. But someone who has had those experiences and can say, you know what, I know what you're thinking and I know what you're going through. And this is how you can make it to be. This is how you can make it out of that situation.
Yeah.
And coming from me and coming from you, that's totally different.
Yeah.
So it's important that people who have been through that struggle to reach back and help those so they won't go through the struggle.
And and just I want to stay on that point for a second. Is you're absolutely right. And you help people to navigate through different things. Hell, I ain't in the funeral business. I don't know nothing about that. And I could tell you from personal experience, sitting in that back office in that room when my sister, both of my sisters passed away, when my mother passed away, and sitting back there and trying to navigate through that process. I think your sister was back there helping, and it's it's overwhelming. So when that comes about, I'm not trying to deal with it. I'm dealing with somebody who knows how to deal with it, right? Exactly. And then the same thing with navigating the street and the gun politics. There are people out here who can do it. Myself, other people who can. The sad thing about it is oftentimes people in positions of authority and power who have resources don't value what it is that somebody might
Right.
bring, particularly on the ground level, and that's sad.
Right.
That's
And
sad.
I think I mean, you're absolutely right, and I think that we as a council need to make sure that that there are resources for for groups of people who can go back and
Sure.
make those kind of differences. And the administration and the mayor has to make sure that those resources are available too. So there's a two-sided approach. It's not just government.
Right.
I think government has to make sure that we have to make sure that the resources are there and the funding is there, and there's access to it. But the community plays an even bigger role in making sure that they are ones who are touching the youth.
Absolutely.
Yep.
For sure. Question for you. So you mentioned that you mentor in some of the schools. Do you notice a difference in the children that have a parent in the home versus, I mean, not a parent in the home, that have a father in the home versus the ones that don't have a father in the home?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and what differences do you notice?
So when I mentor, I want to make sure that I'm making a difference.
Right.
Like I wouldn't want to mentor you because you don't need it.
You
So-
sure?
Yeah. Who is this guy? Right? Who is this guy?
Can't call him father.
Yeah, so I want to mentor somebody who really is going to benefit from me being a part of their lives. So when I would do it, I would always ask for the baddest child or the problem child. I would always ask for a child that doesn't necessarily have a father in his home.
Yeah.
Because I think they need it the most. So being a mentor, I wouldn't have been as happy and fulfilled with mentoring somebody who is already on the straight and narrow.
Right.
So and I think a lot of times our mentor groups, they cater to children who don't necessarily need mentors. They might need guidance, they might need access, they might need funding, but do they really need a mentor when they have both parents at home and they're both of their parents are working and involved in their lives? So I'm looking for the child who really, really needs it, who the teachers don't want to deal with. So and it was like night and day.
Yeah.
The children that I would try to mentor, I could see the difference, and I would try to connect with the mom. Like that's the kind of relationship. Like we weren't even supposed to know their family,
Right.
but it's important that the family is a part of it. So
Sure.
like eventually, like when the teacher knows and the student knows that you're sincere and you really want to help, and it's just not a show, like they'll give you access to that mother.
Right.
So we were able to talk, and because she's just as important. Like she can't be left out of the equation.
Right.
So she had to be involved too.
Right.
So there's definitely a difference when a father is not involved versus when a father is involved. And another thing, like I think that we have to. So I have 5 children. If I were only taking care of 3 of my children, but I was taking great care of them, am I a good father?
No.
Right. So I think that a lot of times we let our brothers slide, that when we know that they have outside children, but they're not taking care of them. So I might be the best. I might be taking great care of 4 of my children, but there's one out there who my children don't know, my family doesn't know, they don't know, and they don't know me, and they don't know us. So I might go over there every once in a while, but it's not like my other 4 children.
Yeah.
So I think that's the dynamic a lot of times too, is that like guys have children that they might live with, and they're raising them great, but they have children outside of that home, and they're not raising them.
Right.
So we have to hold them accountable too. Like, you're doing a good job with 3 of your children, but you have 4 children, brother. How can we help?
Right.
And I think that we have to go down that road of how do we help? Like, how do we help our brothers who are struggling with having a relationship with their children? Like, how do we help them to realize, like, we're not trying to target them, that we're trying to help them. We're not trying to, place a target on their head. We're just trying to say, hey, man, how can we help you be a better father? And they have to be humble enough to accept that help. So I think that has to be part of the conversation too. So I don't really know that answer besides having that conversation, but I think that has to be a part of the conversation. Like, how can we help our brothers out there who are struggling with with not being a part of their child's life, and the mothers. I think a lot of times you hear my mother's child, the child of my mother won't let me.
Right.
And how much of a role does the court play in that?
Right.
Fortunately, I never had to go through that, but I hear that sometimes like the courts play a role in that too. And we have to acknowledge that this system has made it okay for us not to be fathers to our children.
Yeah.
And they have promoted it. to the point where sometimes if you have a man in the house, you can't get assistance.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have to
That's
address
structural
that.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have that whole systematic thing. We have to address that too. But how do we help our brothers help them realize how important it is to take care of all their children?
Yeah. I think when you say that, I think about the work that we do with Out of the Ashes, with the presentation that we do. And it was important to us to get involved in that, because one thing that I realized coming home, so I was separated from Amar for 14 years. He was 2 when I went in, he was 16 when I came out. And what I realized quickly when I came out was that there's no playbook for that. You know what I mean? For getting back into a child's life after being gone for a significant amount of time. It could be less, it could be more, but there's no playbook. And there was really no support and any help for that. So you mean to tell me, because, and it's connected by biology alone, biological, right? Because he doesn't really know who I am, and I don't really know who he is as a human being. And people had the false assumption that, and even, our contact was a little limited, but even people, like I know guys who their kids came to see them every day, every week or whatever like that, but it's still a disconnect there.
Oh, yeah.
And people didn't understand the fact that you have to really help somebody to get back into, to restore the relationship, to get reconnected, because a lot has happened. You know what I mean? You don't know whether the child was abused. You don't know whether the child, Mara always mentions whether they missed meals, or how drastic their lifestyle changed because the father wasn't there. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things with Out of the Ashes that we talk about. And you made me think about that. As far as holding brothers accountable, because I know men who have come out of prison and told me straight up, brother, I don't even know how to get back into my child's life, man. So that's why it's an important thing to even have that conversation.
Yeah, and that's real. Like it's easy for us who have been in our child's lives to say, just do it. But we haven't been down that path. We haven't lived their life. So that needs to really be just a part of the solution. And then maybe the prison system needs to be a part of that too. Like,
Absolutely.
You're about to get out, or even when you go in.
Even the whole
As soon as you go in, look, we know that you have children. It's important that you stay connected. It's important that when you're released, that you are a part of that child's life. So that has to be a part of that whole rehabilitation that's supposed to happen.
And sadly, brother, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that I think that's crucial that we address that whole systematic failure.
Yeah.
That's crucial as a governing body and as a community.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Another failure, I definitely think that the prison system could do a better job of preparing men to come home to take care of their child or begin building that relationship. But on the flip side of that, the school system, the data shows that once your dad is out of your life, or doesn't live in the household with you, that you're more prone to behavioral issues and things like that. There should be, you guys were talking, I was just thinking, I'm like, man, there should be transparency in the data. We should know for every school in Delaware what percentage of the kids does not have a father in the household due to incarceration. There should be a program in place for that child, period.
Yeah, that would be all.
Sure.
Hands
that's
down.
genius.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, because we can't just act like mass incarceration didn't happen. We can't just act like, a lot of black men, were literally wiped out of their community. Some things more severe than others, but a lot of people, it was around drugs. Like I have friends who literally had life in prison for selling drugs.
Wow.
Had life in prison for selling drugs, right?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, some of them were able to get out, some of them were not. But the reality is the damage that was done to the relationships with their family and their kids and things of that nature. So when you talk about, we know that every time we do a presentation, we go to schools and things of that nature, it's always a good percentage of the kids, and I can't remember off the bat what it is, but it's usually upwards of 15 to 20% of the kids on our presentations have parents, a mother or a father who either has been incarcerated, let me back up. It's higher for has ever been incarcerated, but currently incarcerated and out of the child's life. it's a high percentage, and nobody's talking to the kids in the schools about that stuff.
So we got to make sure that, like as a government, I think that we have to make sure that what you all are doing is properly funded, and that we're supporting you like financially, and like we're promoting what you're doing. Like what you're doing should be done like 100-fold throughout the city, because you're hands on, and like we can't. I think so many times we just step back and say that's the family's problem. That's the parents' problem. But a lot of those children, a lot of those parents were children who grew up without a parent. So how are they really supposed to know how to raise a child? We expect them to know how to raise a family when they weren't raised by a family. So it's important again, like to reach back and just promote and fund things that like the kind of programs that you're currently doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people doing doing amazing work out here, without a doubt.
Yeah, so I don't want to put it out there like that.
Yeah.
But we need it should be 10-fold more, and you should have all the funding that you need.
I
sure.
totally agree.
Right.
I totally agree. So, as a father, what do you think your greatest success has been in being a father?
Probably going back to how we started the conversation, that because of the dynamics of my children, that they all know each other, that they all love each other, and that means I can't even put in words how much that means to me. Just knowing that they're always going to take care of each other, and again, like being able to go to each other's houses. Like they don't have to come to my house to all be together.
Right.
Like they can go to each other's houses and all be together. So I just gotta give like thanks and praise to their mothers.
Right.
Yeah.
But our ability, probably the greatest accomplishment is just, it hasn't been me. It's been all of us. My three, the children, the mothers of my 3 children, of my 5 children, and me. So I can't take the credit. It's always important to me to make sure that they all were connected and love each other, but I couldn't have done it without their mothers.
Right.
So that's probably it. And just in seeing, what we did when they were younger, just come to fruition now as they're older, and how they're just always looking out for each other.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
nice.
I mean, it's an awesome feeling.
Nice.
Trippy, what advice would you give to a young father or a father in general who might not have the best relationship with their kids, but they hear this and they say, you know what, Trippy know what he's talking about, and I'm listening to this guy. What advice would you give to that father to help them in their journey of strengthening their relationship with their child?
First, I would have them reach out, and if the relationship is broken with the child's mother, to work on that, because that's crucial. To work on that relationship with the child's mother, and then work on that relationship with the father. And if the father and the mother, if their relationship is beyond repair, like don't quit, don't give up, don't get frustrated. That's the biggest thing. I think that like the guys that I've been had the same conversations with, they have given up because of maybe the court system, or maybe because of the mother, or because of the mother's family. Like don't quit.
Yeah.
That would probably be the biggest piece of advice I could give to them, is no matter what, like first try to work it out with the mom so you guys are at least cordial. It's extremely important that a child sees their mother and father as friends.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to be together, but they have to see their parents as friends. So be friendly and support their mother in any way that you can. But even if you can't, if that relationship can't be fixed with the mother, like don't give up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just don't let anybody come between you and your child.
Yeah. It's it's amazing because there's a lot of older men, and Mara, you can attest to this as well, that we've met with that have been in Out of Ashes, been at the presentation, and like guys, I'm talking about like 40s and 50s, and guys have broken down, and saying that even at this age, they still want to have a relationship with their dad. So you imagine somebody's 40 years old, then their dad might, 35, 40, the dad probably, in the 60s or whatever, but they still got the door open. So just men, fathers out there, if you have a strained relationship with your child, man, just reach out, man. Keep trying. Don't, it might have been a long time, man, but you never know what you can fix and what you can heal in your progeny. You know what I mean? Your grandchildren coming after them. We had a brother on here. Was it June? We had a dope conversation, man, with him and his father, and it was like he was an adult. He was like, listen, you know, hey man, my, you know what I mean, I'm cool, you know what I mean, but if you're gonna be in my kid's life, be in my kid's life. And it's like, and his father took that to heart, you know what I mean, and kind of leapfrogged over. It's funny, kind of ping ponged over him to his children, and he got this dope relationship with his grandchildren that he comes, spends time with them, comes to see them, supports them, and everything like that. And then it came full circle because the relationship with his son, you know what I mean, got better. And that's that story like that. When I think about that, it's just, and just imagine imagine if his papa had given up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
How much, you know what I mean? How much quality and richness that would have been taken out of not only his grandchildren's life, but his child's life as well. So.
Yeah, I met a lady who worked in the I met a lady at a gym one time, right? And she's older now. She's probably almost 30 years old, but it came to be through conversation that I knew her dad. And she was like, "Oh, you know my dad?" She told me her dad's name. I was like, "Yeah." She said, "When I was about 11 years old, my dad walked out of my life, and I haven't talked to him since. And they live in Wilmington."
Wow.
And she was like, "You know what? This goes to what you were just saying." She said, "You know what? I have never changed my home number, and I have never changed my cell phone number because I want my dad to always be able to reach out to me. Like, so if one day something clicks and he says, I want to start this relationship back with my daughter, she wants him to have access."
Wow.
So that speaks to directly to what you just said. So it's you know, it's critical that relationship that you just never sever and don't give up.
Right.
Like, no matter how long that time period has been, just don't give up, because it affects, like, it's affecting her. She's, like I said, she's in her 20s, almost 30, and she still is struggling with not having this relationship with her father.
Yeah. Wow.
Like almost 20, 15, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
So, you got any? Oh, before I had one more question for you. Why do they call you Trippi?
Because I was born. So all the men on my dad's side of the family have nicknames.
Right.
Like my dad's, like, his name is Ernest, but everybody calls him Sammy.
Right.
I had an uncle, his name was Ben. Everybody called him Spiggles. Like all of his siblings and all the guys, we always had nicknames. So I was born 2 months early, and my parents went on a trip. And as soon as they got back, my mom had me. So he said the trip made me come earlier. So they've been calling me Trippi since I was born.
Wow.
So like when people call me Ernest, I was like, okay, this is somebody who doesn't know me at all.
Right.
Because like when I graduated from high school, like when I graduated from Dell State, they all said, Trippi Congo, come forward.
Right.
When I was in mortuary school, it was like they announced me as Trippi, so everybody knows me as Trippi.
Right.
I don't mind Ernest, but I'm just not used to it. Like,
Right.
if people want to call me Ernest, I don't have a problem with it. It just seemed like there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
Because I just grew up.
Right.
I was always Trippi. It was never Ernest.
Okay. Awesome. So, do you have any parting words for our viewers and for our audience?
Honestly, I just want to thank you all for bringing me on. This was an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
And when you said something to me, I was like, oh man, I've been like, this is my alley right here. This is my groove, because I know how important it is.
Yeah.
And I just know how blessed I've been and how fortunate I've been to be able to have my children, like the family dynamics, and everybody just loves each other. And I know what happens when those dynamics aren't there.
Right.
I just really applaud you guys for doing it.
Thank you.
And I just know that we just the community really needs to applaud you, and the community needs to make sure that you all can be, out of the ashes, can be as effective as it can be. And through our role in government, we have to make sure we have to realize the importance of social programs like Out of the Ashes.
Right.
That we have to make sure that you have funding. That we have to make sure that you have a team with you who can go out in the community and help fix our broken families.
Yes,
so
sir.
So honestly, man, I just want to thank you. I'm not really here to promote myself.
Right.
So I'm not even gonna get into that. But I just want to make sure that what you're doing and what you're doing and what other groups out there are doing have access and have funding, and that we appreciate and that we just support everything that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. We definitely appreciate what you're doing. like, you know, we on this podcast, we don't get into a whole lot of other stuff, but we talk about issues, and we support people that support issues that are important to us. So again, we want to thank you for coming out.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you
brothers.
for being a guest on Missing Dad, Mr. Trippi Congo. I called him Ernest at the beginning. Trippi Congo, and
Yeah, man, it was an honor.
and my name is Coley Harris.
Don't cut us yet.
And you know what? And real quick, I just want people who may be watching on Facebook Live, like if they have any suggestions or if they have any comments about what we were talking about, or if they're a struggling father, or if they know a struggling father, like maybe leave me a inbox, or don't leave like a public comment, but leave an inbox on how I can point them to you.
Yeah.
And you all can help them. So I think that's critical. If they have some suggestions on how they can help, or if they want to be a part of what you're doing, just leave me a message. Or if they have any, guidance for us, because we don't know all the answers.
Absolutely.
If they know how we can help mend those relationships, either inbox me or leave me a comment.
Right. And knowing Amar's about to tell them exactly how they can get in touch with us, right?
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're listening or if you're watching on YouTube, wherever you might be seeing this, drop a comment and let us know what your favorite part of this episode was. And also share this with one dad that you know that may need to see this. Just copy and paste the link, send it to them in a text and say, hey, check this out. We're more than willing and open to talk to anybody. We want to get this message as far and wide as possible so that we can stop some of the bleeding in our city and around the world. This issue impacts a lot of people.
Right. So everybody. Yeah. Even though they might not be directly impacted, it impacts impacts this entire city. How can people reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure. So we can be reached at outoftheashesllc.com. That's our website. You can go on there. We got a contact forms, referral forms. We do referrals for people to get services with Division of Social Services. We do our group presentation. We do individual counseling. We do a lot of stuff. Awesome stuff. But it's all around, what's important to us, and that is making sure that we are healing and helping families to heal and be restored. So,
man.
And what can I say it now?
No, I got one more thing. Because Trippi touched on the women a lot in this episode. So, ladies, if you're listening, if somebody forwarded this to you, or if you've been following us for a while, stay tuned. We got something special in store for you guys. Okay. More to come.
All right, and ladies, like if you're that barrier between a father and a child, like it's important that you realize your role in it. So whoever may be watching, whoever may be tuning in on Facebook Live or watching on YouTube, like if you think that you need to be a little bit more humble and welcome that father back into the child's life, not necessarily into yours, like we need you to do that, because that's key.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right, good brothers.
So can I go now? Anyone?
I got one more thing.
Look at you.
No, I'm joking. You can close us out.
But yeah, this has been great. And thanks again. My name is Coley Harris.
This is Amar Melton.
Thank you for listening to Missing Dad.